Hello, welcome to Calling America, where patriots from across the U.S. come together to discuss current bills being passed by Congress and executive orders being signed by former Vice President Joe Biden, and furthermore, how those bills and executive orders affect each of us in our respective states. As always, unless we are quoting direct sources, all statements in this video are personal opinions. You can find all sources in the description below.
Welcome back to another episode of Calling America, where we discuss important political and geopolitical topics that affect us across the country. My name is Mitchell Peel from the great state of Georgia. I'm a conservative thinker, a constitutional originalist, and a First and Second Amendment advocate. So let's meet the rest of the panel. Courtney.
Hi, I'm Courtney Turner. I am a co-founder of Truth Matters and the host of the Courtney Turner podcast. I live in Santa Monica, California.
I'm Sean Wood. I am the guy from Nevada. Ethan?
I'm Ethan Hay. I am from Orem, Utah. I'm a veteran entrepreneur, aspiring author, and one of the founders of Truth Matters. Anita?
Oh, I guess I'm left. My name is Danita Knickerbocker. I'm one of the co-founders of Truth Matters. There's not much else about me.
All right, guys, thank you. Let's jump right in. I know it's been hitting the news and it's been pretty much a hot topic, especially coming out of the White House, and that is the door-to-door knocks, commonly known as knock and talks, especially from the law enforcement side. And this is where they're going to come knock on your door and ask about your vaccine status. So does this seem like the beginning of the new brown shirts or the American Nazism, to be honest with you? I mean, what do you say, Sean?
Well, here in Nevada, we already have people knocking door to door. They're nonprofits, but they're actually like political nonprofits for the Democratic Party. And they're going door to door, giving out information about the vaccine and asking people if they're vaccinated. And I don't know if any of you guys have knocked door to door before, but you're given either a map of the area or a app that has a map of the area, and you can mark different things on each of these houses. So I'm sure they're going through and marking which house is vaccinated and which is not. So I'm pretty worried about this already. Some of the cities here in Nevada, like Elko, have come out against this, and they've written letters to Steve Sisolak, our governor, asking him not to implement this in Nevada. But I can definitely see Steve Sisolak doing that because he does whatever California does.
So, I mean, what concerns me mostly is they've already put out the fact that they're going to ignore no trespassing signs because it doesn't affect them. I don't know. I mean, Ethan, what do you think? Should that affect them? The fact they'd be able to just walk up to your house, even though you have no trespassing sign or no solicitation? They said that.
They're literally selling a product. They're selling the Pfizer and the Johnson & Johnson and Moderna vaccines. Those are literally products at this point in time. They aren't vaccines. They haven't been approved by the FDA. And so right off the bat, that should be no, you're not allowed on my property if I don't want this. I shouldn't be forced to take this. And here in Utah, our governor is pushing pretty aggressively to try and get everyone vaccinated. Local mayoralities and municipalities are beginning to push a little bit more aggressively as well. In fact, in Orem, that's where I live. I saw a recent push by the city council that are wanting to try and make access easier for vaccines. They're really, really, really pushing hard on this. And building on top of what you said about the Gestapo, the brown shirts, I would go a step further and say this is more along with the lines of the NKVD. For those of you who don't know what the NKVD is, they were Stalin's secret police, and they were run by a guy, believe it or not, who was worse than Stalin, Lavrentiy Beria. That guy was an absolute monster. I strongly recommend everyone look him up. But he was so bad, in fact, that he was a pedophile.
Right.
And he was so bad, in fact, that Stalin wouldn't even let his own daughter in the same room with Beria. And Stalin didn't give a crap about anyone.
Yeah. Courtney, coming from California, this probably isn't so shocking, to be honest with you, right?
Well, it's not necessarily shocking, but it's really not favorable. It's definitely not something I or many people in California are in favor of or supporting. But I think Newsom created. He's been sending out vaccine checkers to go door to door, and there was an organization, a nonprofit organization, and it was called Healthy Future California, that's been set up to go around and knock on people's doors and question their vaccinated status. And there are a lot of people who are trying to fight against this and who are not happy about it at all.
People coming to your house and soliciting kind of information like that, my wife is in the mental health field, so she's very aware of what HIPAA rules are, to the standpoint of, if she gets a phone call, okay, she has to inform the person on the phone not to release any HIPAA information. That could be anything. It could be the people's names, of course, anything, social security numbers, the PII stuff, but names and any diagnoses and stuff like that, she would have to either go to another room, okay, or if we happen to be in the car, she would have to make sure to inform the people, said, you can't release any HIPAA info because I have my husband in the car. And he's not allowed to hear that.
So,
however, these people are coming to your door and asking you, and they're, who are they? Who are they? Really?
So, but my understanding is that it's not a violation. Unfortunately, I don't like this, but my understanding is that it's not a violation of HIPAA if they ask you directly. Now you can say, I need to be in privacy and to share this information. You can say you don't want to share the information, but it's not a violation of HIPAA to share your own personal information. That's within your purview to do so. It would be a violation of HIPAA if they ask you and then they go share it with somebody else.
But is anybody thinking the fact that they're going to take this information and we promise we'll keep it private?
Right,
we know
right. I understand that.
Yeah, right. I recognize that if they ask you and they say they're going to keep it private, it probably falls in there, but we all know that's not going to happen. They're here to pick out the houses that have people unvaxxed and they identify it. That's, in my opinion, plain and simple, that's the purpose of it. So, so that they can come back one day and, either forcibly remove you from your house and make you get the vaccine. If there's a mandatory thing that comes down, they need to know where you are.
What if you convincingly enough say that you are vaccinated? Do they just leave your house? What do they put down?
I think
they didn't see your vaccination card.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think that they're going to be going around asking for a proof of vaccination. I think that they're going to give you
I think that's the further problem.
And there was actually someone in California, I think she was the first person
that just got busted.
Yeah, it was a federal offense.
Homeopathic doctor. Oh.
Apparently, it was considered a federal offense that she had falsified a vaccine card. Yeah.
Well, they're claiming and they're charging her with that, but she hasn't been convicted of that being a federal offense yet.
Right. It's just the claim so far, and I think they are just trying to make a case of her. That's my assessment of it.
Well, they enjoy bringing out. We're seeing, especially with what's going on at the congressional hearings for the January 6th thing. They like to bring out actors and make the situation worse than it actually is.
Of course.
And we know for a fact that they overinflated the numbers in Colorado. We know for a fact that Gavin Newsom and the governor of New York did not do a good job in handling the scenario. And so now I think it's all coming down to damage control or the powers that be. And as such, they're pushing this more aggressively. And they're literally trying to other people who are not getting the vaccine.
So I think it's interesting because they keep they're using cases as a means of trying to convince people that they need to take the injections. However, the CDC has just they've rescinded the request for the emergency use authorization of the PCR test for COVID-19 because they can't differentiate between, we were just talking about this, they can't differentiate between the flu and COVID. But I think it's interesting that they're using that as justification. So now,
which they admit a year later,
a year later.
Let's admit a year later that our tests that we've been shutting down the entire world based on, can't differentiate between the flu and COVID. Well, yeah, we already knew that. We told you that, but you shut down the whole world.
Yes, they shut down the whole world, but that's which that alone is, horrifying, but they're now rescinding the emergency use authorization, but that is their justification for the vaccine, is that the cases are rising. Like all these places are saying that. They're also using the variant now too. Yes, Ethan?
So, Sean, it looked like you wanted to say something, and then I'll ask my question.
Yeah, it was about the vaccines and, could you just lie? Well, I know in Nevada, there's a central database that you can access online to see your vaccination status.
Yes.
So there's databases out there already.
Yeah, and there is in California as well.
Yeah.
So they don't have, so what Newsom has is they can check whether you've been vaccinated. And if you were, then they can assume that you're not, if you're not in the database.
Yep.
Essentially. Yeah. Very sneaky.
Oh, that's a very wiggly way around of around HIPAA right there.
Yeah.
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 So I got two questions. So first of all, Courtney, this is in particular for you. So Gavin Newsom right now is in the middle of a recall. Have any of the candidates addressed the vaccination issue and the recall? And then my second part of this question, this goes out to everyone. Do we know how many people have actually died from taking in the injections? I saw somewhere that it was anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000.
So, okay. So I'll answer the second question first. The latest that I've seen was on the VAERS, and VAERS has stopped reporting the deaths, which is also quite questionable. Take that information as you will. The latest that they updated was 60,000 from what I saw. Typically, they say that VAERS is only reporting 1%, 1 to possibly 10. I've heard it both ways, but a lot of medical experts say, and officials say that it is typically 1%. So that means, yeah, it could be 60,000, it could be 600,000. We really don't know. But
second question. So I saw somewhere, I forget where exactly, but I saw somewhere where a doctor was talking about where when they do vaccination trials, they will give it to, say, like 100 people for the initial human test runs. And if 25 of those people were to die, they automatically shut down the entire process.
Yeah, so that's why we don't have a swine flu vaccine at this point. The swine flu vaccine, they actually created a swine flu vaccine and they distributed it for 2 days to, I think, 1,000 people. And after 24 deaths reported, they shut down the program. And years later, they still don't have a vaccine for it. Everything that I read said 24, and that was from the CDC and FDA. I mean, years and years later, and they still haven't gotten a swine flu vaccine. After 24 deaths, they shut down the program.
Crazy.
And yet, in March, VAERS had already updated to over 5,000 deaths in the US alone, and then more overseas in the UK and in Asia and other places. And now they reported that there was like 45,000 that were actually not reported, that should have been reported, that were vaccine deaths, that made it go up to almost 60,000 deaths are related to this vaccine. And they still haven't shut it down. And they're still not just they haven't shut it down, but they're still pushing it to be mandated.
Yep.
And they're going to go door to door to ask you if you've gotten it.
It's really insane. And there's not a single governor that I have seen that has not been pushing this. Every single one of them is pushing this. Yeah. Yep, and pushing really hard. As for what the candidates in California are saying, to answer that question, most of them seem to be pretty on board with pushing the jab, except I don't know officially, so I'm not going to speak officially to his claims as a platform and what he's running on, but I have heard him on his show on Larry Elder. I've heard him say that he doesn't think it should be forced, but I don't know what his official running platform is. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah,
I mean, that because he came on pretty recently, but the others, as far as I know, have been okay with it.
Yeah, I was noticing the same thing. Even Ron DeSantis is pushing it, although not that very hard.
No, he's pushing it hard, really hard.
Well, I mean, last time I guess I saw, but okay. However, if anybody watched the president speak at the Turning Point in Arizona, before in most of his speeches, he spent several minutes on this. He kind of blew past it pretty fast. He mentioned that it was there. They did the warp speed. They got it done. Get it if you need it, if you don't, and then he moved on. I'm kind of hoping that he's getting the message that this is not a good thing to push. Yeah, get your stab in there and then move on.
Well, I know at CPAC there was like crickets when he went on and on and on about it. And I think he definitely did get the memo that time because the audience was really not pleased. It was very quiet. So I think he might have gotten the memo.
Fair enough. And I think that this also is kind of like especially for the Biden administration right now, I think that it is a major distraction for them from all their other bad policies. Because we got inflation that we got to worry about. We got China that we got to worry about. Our former Vice President Joe Biden is getting run over by world leaders on a daily stage. And he is not performing well. But still, I think that this is them trying to be like, hey, we're getting this done right. Hey, so we need a gold star for this. No, you don't get a gold star. So there's one thing if you push it aggressively, but what they're talking about doing, what they're actively trying to do, and I think that this is in line with what you were saying, Courtney, how governors left and right across the country are actively pushing the vaccine. And DeSantis is pushing it aggressively. I'll acknowledge that. But he's not forcing it.
No, he's not mandating it. He's definitely leaving it to be choice. And he's fighting against the mandate. That he is. But he's pushing it aggressively. And I think the Biden administration is pushing it because they're getting orders from the global leaders. There's been statements that we have to get to 70%. So that's clearly a number that they have chosen. And I think we are very far from that. And that's why they're pushing so hard.
Who the hell picked that number?
Out of the air, buddy. Out of the air.
Schwab? I don't know.
Oh, it's funny because Ireland got up to 90% vaccinated, their entire population. And they're enforcing more closures and lockdowns.
Yeah.
So it just shows that the plan is to get us all vaccinated and then never let go of the power and to always keep us locked down.
Yeah, and that Klaus Schwab has been talking about. I mean, he's been saying that there's going to be continuous cycling lockdowns for years and years to come. And he's using climate change as the justification for this. We need to be sustainable, and we are preserving the planet by staying our homes shut down. And it also, of course, brings us closer to a world economic system where you own nothing and you'll be very happy. So
I was going to jump on the fact and I hope we can share it in links below, is a video by Jeffrey Prather where he actually speaks about how you should approach or treat anybody coming and talking to you about your vaccine status. In other words, he's the one that actually termed it as the knock and talks, which is a very common thing that the police, DA, FBI do. Yeah, law enforcement, they come knock on your door. They try and get as much information for you before you tell them to get lost. If they can get more information from you without needing a warrant or you just volunteering it, fine. They take it with them. So That's a very good video to go look at. It's short and sweet, kind of gives you like a list of things to do, don't do.
Right.
One's very, very clear. Do not go to the door with the gun. There's, probably several people that's probably going to end up happening, just saying, because they don't appreciate people on the property. A lot of rural Georgia will not take kindly. They still call them revenuers. I'm not lying. They still call them revenuers. If you're from the government and you're there to help, you're a revenuer. So I wouldn't suggest, if you're one of these knock and talk people, to go down that dirt road to that house at the end. So, but yeah, that was I saw that video you posted like a week or two ago. I thought it was pretty informative. Be nice, be kind, but at any point in time, you don't have to say anything.
And you do not have to let them in your house.
No,
honestly, you don't have
not.
to talk to them at all. You can just be like, I'm not interested, and just shut your door.
That's right.
You don't have to say anything.
Well, you guys saw that video with JP Sears, right? That he did with his wife, where the Biden knock and talks came by, and JP Sears was playing the Biden knock and talk, and his wife answered the door, and she's like, "Why are you here?" And he's like, "Oh, we're just here trying to force you to get the vaccine," in essence. And ultimately, she ended up pulling out a gun, and this is all just a sketch. She pulled out a fake gun on him, and he's like, "Wait, before you go, is it okay if I take your child?" Because he just had a baby. Yeah. And the thing that is really sad about this is the fact that they're now pushing things so aggressively on children, A. And then B, we're seeing lockdowns reoccurring all around the world, and we're seeing the mandating of passports all around the world as well. In France, for instance, France just passed legislation requiring people to have vaccine passports. And in Australia, people are locking down again. In Sydney.
Australia is talking about forcing the vaccine as well. And what's really interesting about that is very little of their population is actually vaccinated. Yeah.
From any vaccine, not just the COVID vaccine.
There have been plenty of companies, like these big pharmaceutical companies, who have actually gone in trouble and sued for testing vaccines on people in Africa.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We can trust them. We can trust them.
They are
all the time,
as pure as the driven snow.
Yeah.
But another thing that's really interesting to think about is the fact that they're trying to portray people like us who are vaccine hesitant as a bunch of hicks, as people who are just, oh, we don't want no darn vaccination, and that's not true at all. What we are is we're all. I see that look you're giving me, Mitch. I'm sorry.
that was pretty good. That was about right on.
I'm sorry, but they like to portray anyone who talks with us. They like to portray people who are vaccine hesitant or disagree with the program that they're pushing as uneducated, unintelligent, and quite frankly, some person from out in the rural area of the United States. But one of the things that has me the most amazed is the fact that one of the biggest names in the Democratic Party family is the Kennedys. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has come out so hard against vaccines.
He has been for decades. He has been really, for decades. Yeah.
And then another person who you would not think about is Naomi Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
Naomi Wolf was for years the Democratic Party, the left's golden girl.
Yeah.
They loved everything about her. Everything about her was feminism. But she has come out so hard against this. And as a result, they have banned her on Twitter. They have also started calling her a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
She was their golden girl. They don't care. The big problem is that the left and the powers that be are only interested in maintaining control and power. And anyone who deigns to even question one little aspect of that, cut off right away.
So yesterday, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, on national television, compared unvaccinated, just the COVID vaccine, not complete anti-vaxxers, but unvaccinated people that are not vaccinated with COVID vaccine, he compared them directly to drunk drivers, and they have no care for anybody else's life. And he compared them to drunk drivers. And it's like,
What does
so
he
you
have to
think that
say?
they're not all there?
What does he have to say about the drivers who are having all these accidents? They're actually like drunk drivers. The accidents, people who are having vaccine related car accidents, because they're
Or, people that are, accidentally killing somebody with their car and then becoming a woman.
Well,
So they're not in charge of it.
Bruce Jenner. I mean, Caitlyn Jenner. But another thing that's really interesting is he's so focused on the vaccine, but he's not focused on how crappy of a job.
That's going to get us kicked off right there.
I mean, she didn't kill anybody, but he did.
Yeah, I can see how
he doesn't exist anymore.
Well, we're going
it might get confusing. That's why there are all these pronouns to really clear things up for you.
Yeah.
As if the world isn't as if the world isn't confusing enough already.
No, clearly not.
I wanted to say one more thing about the governor of New York, Cuomo.
Yeah.
He came out 3 days ago. Was it Saturday? And there's a video now of him, and it's on our page on Truth Matters if you want to go check it out. Mm-hmm. But he says that he doesn't care how it happens or what exactly goes on, as long as we are knocking on doors, taking people, putting them in cars, driving them to a medical center, and getting them vaccinated. That is a lot of different crimes all in one. First, trespassing on people's property. Second, kidnapping them.
Yeah.
Third, fraud in, saying that this thing is not going to kill you, but it has a very high chance of harming you and killing you. And then assaulting them by forcing a needle into their body and injecting them with a fluid that is very likely to harm them. That's like, and he's like, we need to do this. It's the plan. I don't care how it gets done, but we need to do it. We're going to knock on those doors. We're going to put people in cars. We're going to drive them down. Like, how is that okay to say on national television?
It's okay for him and his family to say that, because his family, quite frankly, is connected to the mob. So that's very mobster of him, and he's going back to his roots.
Yeah. Oh my goodness! But seriously though.
So I got a thought here. So, I mean, we were speaking about it earlier before we started the podcast in conversation. I mean, just think about the language they're using. I mean, even Danita said they are saying it out loud now. Courtney, what do you think? I mean, do you think they're doing this on purpose? I mean, for example, calling the people coming around knocking on your doors strike forces.
Do I think they're doing that on purpose, or
do you think that they're saying this stuff out loud, which is actually kind of abhorrent? Do you think they're doing it on purpose so they can force some sort of
I actually do think they're doing it on purpose. I think it's conditioning. I think it's so that people don't find it so shocking. This is a means of conditioning. This is a way of kind of desensitizing people to a trauma response and making them more likely to be complicit and think that this is a normal, perfectly acceptable behavior, when in fact they're actually kind of coercing people, which is not acceptable at all, and that they are trying to convince people against their will. But I think that, I think they're saying it out loud. So they do a lot of foreshadowing. They do a lot of these, incremental type of laying groundwork. And I think it's to mitigate against potential uprising of people, so that they're more likely to acquiesce.
I also feel like
So-
that there's a window of opportunity that they have in order to push all this through, and it's coming to a close faster and faster. So they have to ramp
With
up their
22?
rhetoric. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
because
Yeah,
in
I think that's
22
true.
they're all going to be out of office. Well, only if we actually get audits done, because other than
Right.
that, if
Did you
we
guys-
don't ever actually let any audits happen, then it's just going to continue to be election fraud and election fraud and election fraud, and nobody will ever win again.
Did you see that they took the Arizona audit off of Twitter?
I did.
So they removed the Arizona audit Twitter page, and then they also removed today. They removed
Georgia,
Michigan's audit
Wisconsin, Michigan.
Twitter page, Wisconsin,
All of them.
and Georgia. Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
the pressure is increasing for them, and
Mhm.
the fact. So, I'm loving this every step of the way.
That's actually
Because-
good news. That's actually good news. Because
Because
that means we're over the target and they're getting crushed.
well, the interesting
Literally,
thing
they're
is-
shitting their pants.
Well,
Yes.
So I want to say something. So if you look at the thing that is most popular amongst like younger people, it is what their parents don't want them to do, because because most teenagers are actively looking for a reason to rebel against their parents. And this is very much the rebellion. What Trump started is very much the rebellion against the parents, who are the deep state, so to speak. And people are waking up. There are more people waking up. And I saw a poll recently, I think on the Washington Times, that said 10% of Democrats are now doubting the veracity of and the truth of the election. 10% of the Democrats. That is huge.
Yeah. If you believe the numbers, that's 8 million people.
But how do
Right.
those numbers make sense either?
Yeah.
If they admit that Trump got 75 million, and they admit that Biden got 80 million, and then they also say that over 5 million went to other people, right? That's too many, because
Mhm.
there's only 132
Yeah.
million registered voters.
There's a bunch
how
of
does-
phantom
How do
voters
you
in
get
there.
over 150 million voters?
Well,
That's
let's also not just discount the fact that Biden couldn't pack a room. He couldn't pack a
You couldn't
Yeah,
pack a
but-
basement.
Yeah, but it's also they just say that all of those people were scared of going out, so they all voted mail-in ballot, which is fine. Like that argument, okay, cool, whatever. But
there's some veracity
if
to
there's
it.
only 4 apples, how do you get 3 and I get 2? If there's only 4 apples, how can you have 3 and I have 2?
It's
Can
one's
you
an
stop
orange.
talking logic? You're trying to do
Like-
math. Don't you know that math is racist?
Math is
Words are
racist.
racist, Courtney.
Apparently.
Words are racist. We can't use words. We just have to.
Signs are
So
racist.
it's so anyway, back on my question to Courtney. So I kind of look at it a little bit different. I think what they're actually trying to do, and I kind of side with you there on the conditioning thing. I even said it to, I don't know if I said it in the Calling America group, or I said it to some friends. I can't remember. I was texting stuff back and forth. Anyways, so yeah, it's almost like, conditioning. So when, your neighbor gets a strike force come to their house, they won't be shocked you're getting dragged in the street. Oh, well, he didn't take his vaccine. So, I mean,
So,
come on,
yeah.
But at the same time, another part of me sitting there thinking like, okay, the faster they push this, the faster they anger people, the faster we're going to get a natural driven false flag. And what I mean by a natural driven false flag is they create the environment in which it's going to explode. And then they step back and say, see these rednecks down in Georgia? They're just a bunch of redneck and, white supremacists. And they done shot up a bunch of these door knockers. Well, I mean, you created it. You called them strike forces. What do you think is going to be emanating in somebody's mind when you say you're going to send a strike force to their door to ask about their vaccine status?
I want to build on this, and then sorry, Danielle, you want to go first?
Yeah. So I working with criminals and, my career, it's very common that the rule is you don't you don't make them commit a crime, right, in order to imprison them, because that's against the law. But criminals, yes, a lot of criminals are very, very brilliant, which is why they get away with a lot of shit before they get caught. But the criminals that are extremely brilliant, they still make mistakes and they still build their own little house of cards that will fall on them. And I think that we can help them build that house of cards, and it's going to fall on them. And I think that that's kind of, being a religious person, I think that there's speed in this, and that we can see that it's backfiring already on them with the 10% Democrats that now think election was a fraud, or all of these things that are happening, right? The VAERS reporting system is now saying that 60,000 or close to 60,000 deaths are reported directly in connection with the vaccine, right? All of these things are happening. And I think that they're speeding up so much because they're scared, and they are literally going to implode themselves. Like, some of us just got to sit back and watch. And as somebody that does law enforcement, and you're just waiting to arrest the criminal, sometimes people are going to get hurt because you let the criminal do the crime, right? So that you can arrest them. But you got to just sit back and watch sometimes. And I think that that's happening right now. And it's going to happen in the next year until 2022 elections, because they are literally so scared and they are imploding.
They're terrified. They're absolutely terrified. And we're seeing that with how much they prop up what happened on January 6th. I mentioned that earlier. But I don't know if you guys have watched the hearings at all. But the hearings have been nothing more than Capitol Hill police officers sharing a sob story about what happened. They're like, oh, we were tortured. There was one guy who said that they were tortured. I mean, there was some shoving. We saw a lot of shoving. We saw a lot of anger. We saw a little bit of violence, but nothing to the extreme. And the only thing that they're saying is like the embracing of the Capitol. Now, everyone here can say with that unequivocally, that was wrong, and that was stupid, and that was detrimental to what was actually supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But that has also given the Democrats fodder to try and build this up. But I think that Americans, all the people I've talked to at least, are sick and tired of hearing about January 6th. They're like, they just move on.
We also now know that they had a lot of information that something was going to happen. So
a week before.
Right. And so they have a pretty good sense of who the perpetrators were. And yet, if you watch the tapes, it was a scenic tour where they moved the velvet ropes and let them on in. So, yeah, it doesn't really sound like this was, and they keep calling it an armed insurrection. And I keep making this joke. I'm like, so what were they armed with? Cell phones? Because all I saw, nobody had arms. This was a bunch of people with their cell phones filming themselves. So clearly they didn't think they were doing things wrong. They're filming themselves, you know. As far as I've heard some of these testimonies that they're being abused, and all the sob stories, and of course AOC is talking about how she was very concerned that she was going to be raped. She gave a whole sob story about this. She wasn't there, but somehow she was a victim. So this is all supposed to be very convincing.
Well, they were armed with their arms. And
right,
more people die. Guns. More people die from being, punched and kicked than by rifles. So the arms and legs are definitely more scary than those rifles.
But guns kill people. Nobody pulls the trigger. Nobody gets in trouble. The guns get in trouble because the guns kill people.
The gun is a sentient being. Yeah. Just respect the gun. So I want to build on that. That is such a stupid argument. They're like, guns kill people. No, they don't. No, they don't. Look.
Just like my pencil didn't write my report paper. Okay?
This is a book. That's it. A gun is not dangerous if you know how to handle it. But even then, you still should treat it with the utmost respect. I went shooting with my dad quite a bit as a kid. And
a gun by itself, I just want to tell you, a gun by itself is not dangerous. A gun just sitting there is not dangerous. Go on.
No, it has to be put in extreme conditions, and either in a place that is superheated, that
Or
causes
an
the shell
earthquake
stack
where
to
it could
go up.
fall off something and jam, or
Yeah, it has to be in extreme conditions.
That's a
Mitch,
loaded gun, but yeah, go on.
a loaded gun, absolutely. And Mitch, you can probably talk to greater detail on this. But one of the things that my dad always did before we went to the range, he would sit us down and he'd be like, all right, before we go shooting, I want to tell you guys the rules. All right. No matter what happens, you always point the gun up. You never point it at anyone. You always make sure it's pointed down range. You never point, I'm going to swing it around. You're never funny with it. You never twirl it. This is a weapon. Even if it isn't loaded, you got to be careful with it.
Mhm.
yeah. Oh, anyways,
Anything? The
where are
only
we
thing I
going
can
next?
add to all of this, and I'll sum this section up, is if we had an honest media in this country, we wouldn't have 90% of the problems that we have today. So let's hit our next topic, and I really don't know how to jump into this, but privacy concerns.
Well, privacy concerns with three-letter agencies, right? They're tapping into people's emails, their phones, everything, and they're getting data off them. Well, what are they using that data for? To show if
To
you're
find out
vaccinated or
Yeah,
not?
exactly.
To find out, and what are they doing with that data? How are they going to use that data, which is already a blatant violation of the Constitution, and going into anyone's private data without express permission and
Fourth
express
Amendment, anyone?
expressed what do you call it, like intentions of what they're going to do with the data, and letting you know exactly what they're going to do with the data. And I understand that when you sign on to an app, or when you sign on to whatever, you don't read the fine print, right? But the three-letter agencies in this government and in this country, they are taking it way too far and above and beyond. And that goes along with social media and things like that, which we're going to talk about next week. The invasion of privacy it's going to tie into COVID. It's going to tie into all of this, the vaccination status, people going door to door. Who are they reporting that to? They're making it a two-class society. And before you know it, the people who are unvaccinated, who refuse to get vaccinated, are either going to be put in education camps, or they're going to have to pay extra taxes for going to the store, because they have to go at separate times, because they don't want anybody that's vaccinated to be around anybody that's unvaccinated. Almost like, in the 50s, when they didn't want Black people to be around anybody that was any other color, right?
Which
So
we all
you have to
know
go
is
shopping
wrong.
at different times. Like, we all know that's wrong. That's not a thing anymore. And to
And
be
if anyone who
creating
thinks
that
that should be a
system
thing
is
is an idiot. Anyone who thinks that should be a thing is ignorant.
not just an idiot and not just ignorant. That is
That is wrong.
if you're thinking that that's okay, then you are not thinking correctly.
No, absolutely. And I want to build on
Yeah.
this. So I recently wrote an article that will be coming out in the next week about what's going on with this thing called Pegasus. So it's not just the three-letter agencies. It's also the companies themselves. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. All these organizations, all these companies are actively providing information. And the company that developed the Pegasus program is an Israeli company called NSO Group Technology. And back in 2014, they did a merger with another company called The Circle that had clientele in 25 countries, and the Circle's technology gave them the ability to basically hunt down and track cell phones in a matter of seconds.
Wasn't that a movie?
I think it's been a few movies, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was
Pretty
Tom
sure there's
Hanks.
like hundreds of movies.
Yeah, I
about
know.
that.
There's been a lot of
Of the
movies.
Circle.
They always tell you what they're doing.
Oh,
And
about the
how-
Circle. Yeah, and it has Emma Watson and Tom
Yeah.
Hanks. And they
Yeah.
do track down cell phones, and they try to get her to kill her own boyfriend. Or not kill her own boyfriend, but allow her boyfriend to be killed by the society or the Circle as like this good thing and this sacrifice for the greater good.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I don't think I saw that.
That
movie.
came out like 4 years ago. Mitch, that's really funny that you remembered that.
Wow.
Oh, anytime I hear, yeah. That movie had
Yeah.
such an impact on me, because I was telling my wife, I said, look, You think this is science fiction? It is not. It's already in our hands every day. However, okay, like Anita was saying, okay, we sign up on an app and say we agree to, share some of our information, but that's obligatory kind of information. Like, okay, how do you play the game? What kind of you say you're going to share? Gives you the ability to say, okay, what websites you went to and stuff like that. Just try and build a profile, how to sell you. However, that does not give the NSA, the CIA, and every one of them to make a deal with this particular company to get your information. That's not what it's for.
Yeah, the companies are a separate entity. They should not be tied to the government agencies in any capacity, and certainly not without our, disclosure, and certainly not with our consent. So it is a blatant violation of the Constitution.
They have to get a warrant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. But I think personally, I do think that this is not new. I think that it's coming to light. People are becoming more aware of it, and I think they are becoming more transparent about it. And they're using, emergency crisis as an excuse. But I think this is, I think it's been going on for a very long time. One little, way to look at this would be, and I can't prove it, but I think it's interesting little, piece of trivia is that are you all familiar with LifeLog?
I've heard.
Okay, it was a DARPA project.
Right,
and
the predecessor to Facebook.
Oh,
right. So it was a DARPA project, and they had ruled that it was unconstitutional, as a blatant violation of the Fourth Amendment, and so they had to close it down and shut it down. So they shut it down on February 4th of 2004. Do you know what day Facebook started?
The next day?
So many people guessed that, but it was actually the same day, February 4th, 2004.
wow.
Yeah.
Coincidence?
I can't prove that it's directly linked, but it seems a little suspect. I'm just saying. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious in that because, if anybody saw the movie about Zuckerberg and how he came about the Facebook, those, I think it was the two brothers that
Social Network and the Winklevoss.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm curious if they got approached by DARPA or whatever, and they said,
well,
no.
I've read articles, and again, this is speculation, but I have read articles that, Zuckerberg was a CIA project from like a really young age, like as a kid.
Yeah, I've read that too.
Yeah, and that he was groomed for this, and there were no Winklevoss twins.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going off the movie.
It's a great movie, but well scripted and good acting, but I think it might have been just fiction. So it's really interesting though with Hollywood, because they do a lot of foreshadowing, and then they do a lot of disinformation kind of controlling. And in my personal opinion, I think, and again, I can't prove this, just speculation, but I think that was more of the latter. And I think that Circle was a little bit more. Sci-fi tends to be pretty on target with what's actually going on.
Like the Matrix.
If you remember The Manchurian Candidate, we just watched this recently. It's kind of eerie, but it has MK Ultra and the CFR written all over it.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what
well, and the Matrix in the 90s.
Yep. Yeah.
Matrix in the
a great
90s.
one.
Very, very sci-fi, like one of the biggest sci-fi cutting edge action, all of this stuff, right? And even in the 90s and the early 2000s, Keanu Reeves, when he was promoting the movie and going to all these talk shows, he was like, yeah, it's not really sci-fi. It's not really fiction at all. This is a documentary. Like, this is really what happens in Hollywood. And this is what's happening in the world. People just don't see it.
Yep.
And that guy is literally like the most down-to-earth celebrity I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, ridiculous how on point he is all the time. And just under the radar, he takes the movies that he wants, does the ones that he wants, goes to the shows that he wants, but he doesn't really promote himself. He doesn't really do any of that.
He's very proud.
I don't know. I think he might be an alien. He's probably one of the best damn shooters I've seen, even compared to some of the professionals I know. I mean, and he picked that up in short time.
Well,
They said it took him about 3 or 4 months, and I was going like, God, I wish I was that good. He might be alien. I'm just saying. A good alien. I'm not saying a bad one.
Did you guys?
He's a good alien.
Yeah.
I think it was a politician who came out and said that to switch gears a little bit, that the phone company should censor our personal text messages to each other about medical and misinformation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we're actually going to be talking about that next week.
Oh, right.
But yeah,
like, how's that for an invasion of privacy, though? That you can't even have
Pretty
private
much.
conversations with people
100%.
anymore. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they say that Telegram or even like Signal is more secure than iMessage, which iMessage is just a text message through Wi-Fi, right?
Right.
Wow. No, it actually is stored on a database, that Apple sends out to 3-letter agencies.
Right. I mean, when I can go and look up everything that I've ever texted before in my iCloud, then everyone else has it.
Yeah.
Sean, your video is frozen up.
Is it really?
It is.
We hear you fine, but your video is
It's a
frozen.
good picture.
I know.
There you go.
Thanks.
Let me fix it.
I mean, Danita, I mean that probably does fit into the realm of censorship and stuff like that, but that's a huge invasion of privacy.
100%.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, there when the NSA and stuff was like that, it's okay, we're monitoring traffic between foreign countries and stuff, and they pick up somebody, and Tucker Carlson was caught up in this most recently, and they say, oh well, we didn't mean to unmask him, or we just had to do it for a minute just to kind of figure it out. And it's kind of the same thing. They're going to go through and say they're looking for COVID misinformation. What other kind of stuff are they going to pick up on you that you put in a private text? Okay, I just saying, there's probably all kinds of things out there. Not that the NSA isn't probably already picking them up anyways, but then to basically kind of give Verizon the permission to look through it.
Yeah, they're using a virus with a 99.98% survival rate as the emergency crisis to be able to bypass our constitutional rights. Yeah.
To make sure Courtney Turner is not saying that the vaccine is bad. And if she says that, we're gonna go get her.
Yeah.
But there you go. If that's not a brown shirt, Nazi, Third Reich coming back, I don't know what is.
Yeah, it's feeling a lot like a Fourth Reich for sure.
Right. Yeah, it's scary. Has anybody got anything else?
They're giving vaccinations to children, and when you ask a small child about the family life and stuff like that, they'll give that information freely to a teacher because they trust that teacher. And I've seen a lot of teachers asking like completely inappropriate things, like just really prying into family life. It's kind of like with Germany and in USSR, how the neighbors tell on each other.
Stasi.
Right. Yeah. So I'm kind of worried that that's kind of what's going on in our schools right now, not just with the indoctrination, but they're basically taking names and reporting these people to Facebook groups or to the NSA, or how long until we have a tip line that's just going to be full of teachers telling the FBI what their kids said about their families.
Right.
Well, and then there was that 4th grader girl who got up and spoke about the fact that they gave out a gender quiz, basically gender conforming quiz to ask what gender you conform to. And the little kids were like, what does that mean? And the teacher tried to explain it. And one of the boys in the class said, I still don't understand. Is it okay if I ask my mom? And the teacher said, no, you're not allowed to tell your parents anything about what happened here, anything about the test. You're not allowed to talk about the questions on the test outside the classroom. And she said, it's okay, you can trust me. And the little girl was like, that made me feel super uncomfortable. So she went and told her mom.
Right.
And that's
Kudos
what
to
they're
her mom.
doing. They're asking, are you vaccinated? Is your dad
Right.
vaccinated? What about all your siblings? Oh, and don't tell your mom that I'm asking. Like, it's okay. They don't need to know.
Right.
Right.
Terrible.
And that's all I had to say.
All right. Cool.
I just want to say something. I know that things seem bad now, but the fact that people are beginning to wake up to this is a good sign. And it's becoming more and more like a volcano. And not just a little trickle of lava, but a Mount St. Helena explosion is going to become. If they keep pushing as hard as they are, and if they keep being as abusive with the powers that they have, and if they keep trying to overextend the powers that they have, which they're doing right now, they cannot last forever. And ultimately, that'll come back and bite them in the butt. Like we said, 2022 is around the corner. In California, you got the recall going on. In Virginia, if you guys are in Virginia, vote. And vote not just for your gubernatorial candidates. Don't vote for just your state legislatures. Vote at the local level. That is where the most power and impact you can have. Let them know that, hey, we are not okay with this. We want our country back. We want our community back. We want our schools back. We want our children learning back.
And don't just vote Republican because they're Republican. Don't just vote down the ticket because they're Republican. Go and research your candidates, research what they actually want, and then vote for somebody.
Primary people also. Yeah.
Yeah.
Primary research, even run. Many of the people here in this audience who are watching are pretty smart, and we encourage many of you to run. We encourage all of you to run if you want to. I'm trying to force Courtney and Danita, well, not force, but encourage Courtney, Danita, and Mitch to run. And Sean, you should get in there too.
He keeps strongly encouraging it.
Strongly encouraging.
Look, those are good messages all around. I appreciate that kind of confidence, but we've come to the end. Once again, thank you for joining us at Calling America. I'm Mitchell Peel. Sean, Ethan, Courtney, Danita, thank you. And until next time, appreciate it, guys.